Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Gray alien encounters? When I was about 5 or 6 years old, I had a brief encounter with what I believe was a gray alien. I woke up one night with my head facing towards the side of my dresser, and was met with a pair of huge, glossy black eyes staring back at me about a foot away. This creature had a large head with a skinny body, and could not have been taller than 3 or 4 feet. I can't remember if it had a mouth or not, but somehow it communicated the word hello to me in somewhat of a childlike tone of voice. I was extremely terrified, and immediately pulled my blanket over my head and started screaming for my mother. About 15 seconds later, my mother rushed into my room and it was gone. Has anyone else had similar encounters? Just curious, as I don't talk about this event often anymore and would like to know more about these kinds of occurrences.
I was less than 6 years old when they first came for me. I was living in a trailer park with my parents and sleeping in their bed when they walked in. I remember my dad screaming, then getting calm real quick. I calmed down right afterwards. I vaguely remember talking to them before they left, and my parents woke up slightly spooked, but unaware of what happened. I remember them having bird faces, big beaks. The second encounter was at the same location. I was about 6. My dad went to work early in the morning and my mom was asleep. I don't remember exactly how it started, but what you'd call a typical gray alien was tapping at the window in my mother's room. It had a pink bow in its head and was trying to get me outside. After a short conversation, I ran outside to the back of the trailer, and I don't remember anything after that. The third encounter I remember is me being up early at like 6 or 7 before my parents watching TV when I hear a tap on the living room window. I turn to see a dude in what now seems like a hazmat suit waving to me. I go get my mother immediately and frantically. When we get back to the living room, the hazmat guy is gone. The same day, my little brother went missing for a few minutes. My mom put him to bed, and 5 minutes later, he was gone. We ran outside to find him, but he was nowhere to be found. When me and my mom went back inside, she said, "Well, maybe you'll have another brother someday," in a calm manner. Then a few minutes later, we checked his room, and he was back in bed, and we forgot about it. The last encounter I can think of. Around 2011, we lived in some apartments, and I remember looking out my window and seeing a weird light in the distance. My brother told me to forget about it, and I want to go to bed with the lights on because I'm scared. I remember waking up and being super scared of something coming, but no idea what it was. In a weird, hazy dream state, I banged on my parents' door, but it was shut. I ran back to my bed and covered myself with my blankets and remembered being paralyzed, and I remember feeling cold fingers touching my spine. I haven't had an encounter in a decade, but I'm afraid it'll happen again soon. I have a memory of the beak ones too, and they scared the absolute shit out of me. I got in trouble for something, so my parents made me go to my room. I refused to go, so they forced me in and wouldn't let me open the door. I went to the window and it was pitch black outside. From the darkness came this figure with a beak looking inside frantically, and I screamed so loud and started smashing the door with my fists. The next thing I remember was my mom crying and hugging me. OP here. One other story here. I don't remember what happened, but mom is scared and screaming and I'm freaking out crying, looking at my toy box in the closet, trying to focus my fear on that when they come into my room and say words to comfort me, to get me to look at them. When I eventually do reluctantly, I see what I can only describe as a bug's face. It also has a praying mantis arm appendix. I start crying and that's all I remember.
Yes, I was legitimately abducted. The ones I met were a gray-green color and were wearing military green communist Soviet-era looking uniforms. I distinctly remember thinking how their ears looked very similar to ours, just smaller. I got a good view of the main one from the side as I lay there on their hospital lab table, and the shape of the head from the side was also human size. What makes them look odd is the large dark eyes and no lips.
Hello/X/. Lately, I've been having very detailed and vivid flashbacks of events from my life. The one I wish to share with you happened when I was 5 years old. I was awoken one night by what appeared to be my mother, and led out of my bedroom and into the hallway. where I noticed the wall at the end was glowing a soft white glow. I was told to step through this and be quiet on the other side. What I saw shocked me so much that I was in awe. I was standing in a gigantic white room with light everywhere, as bright as day. As I looked around me, there were creatures that fit the description of a typical gray alien. One in particular was standing facing a table, and on the table was a dead, black cow, its stomach open. My astonishment soon turned to horror as my shout of, "Whoa!" attracted their attention, and I was met with a barrage of enraged voices in my head screaming things like, "Keep it down, you little shit! How dare you? Who the hell do you think you are? If you don't keep your fucking mouth shut, we'll crush you." And I crouched to the ground with my hands over my ears, which I might add did absolutely nothing to stop the voices. As I began to cry and say sorry over and over, their anger turned to laughter, and my mother said, "I told you to be quiet," at which point, still sobbing, I was led out of the room into a white corridor which took a sharp turn to the left. I refused to go any further and stood in the corner, looking at this woman who appeared to be my mother, when strips of bluish light started to seep from lines around the top of the head. She very quickly turned into a multitude of bizarre forms, one I remember in particular being like a very large ape. I was told that this was happening because I didn't believe it was really her, and so I very quickly stopped questioning as the changes frightened me. I then heard what sounded like a cow in pain echoing down the corridor, at which point I asked why they were hurting animals, her response being, "We drain them because we need what's inside them." My memory is a little hazy here, but I recall suddenly being in another, slightly darker room where strange humanoid figures, entirely silver, with spheres for heads were walking around, carrying various things. I was told to defecate onto something which was placed underneath me, which after I did so, was taken away. I then recall sitting on a table where I heard my mother and another talking about me. The things that were said, I do not wish to share here. Again, my memory is hazy, but I was then forced to watch a live dissection of a light brown cow, which was suspended in midair. A multi-armed machine from above began shooting thin white-green beams at the animal's face, where the flesh and blood appeared to float off it, only to be caught by something whizzing round, which I believe was a larger mechanism of the machine. As this happened, I watched the cow's face, and my face hurt like nothing I had ever experienced before. My reaction was met with a shout from a harsh female voice to my right saying, "See, he keeps connecting, useless." My next memory is being quickly walked back down the corridor and through the big room, then through the brick wall and into the house by the now silent and cold mother, all whilst I pleaded for her to tell me what I had done wrong. As we reached my room and I sat down on my bed, I was told in a harsh, aggressive tone to give up. She began insulting me and making a sound in my head that sounded like thunder or an explosion, and she laughed as I cowered. Blocking my ears did absolutely nothing, and the family pet and my father heard this too, as they began making noise and shouting. My father shouted that he could not move and that he believed the house had blown up. I screamed to God to make it go away, and as soon as I did, night instantly turned into day, and my arms and legs felt exhausted like I had been sitting in the same position for hours. Furthermore, my father corroborated my story, having heard the commotion, and he was indeed unable to move. My mother slept soundly, only having a vague dream about thunder and lightning. I do not believe that God intervened, and I think that they had simply heard all that stuff from people before and were tired of it, so they did their work and left, leaving me sitting there as a sadistic punishment. The next day, my life took a turn for the worst and never recovered. This, I believe, was partially their doing.
I'll post mine. Basically, I was compelled to take a position close to a door in my room that led outside. Not sure why, but I just felt myself move and take a kneeling position in front of the door like I was in a trance. I sensed something to my left and looked up out of the window and saw two blonde humans standing there and smiling at me. They looked normal. One male, one female, both the same height and not ugly at all. For some reason I could see their whole bodies through the wall, as if the wall was transparent, but not as clearly as I could see them through the window glass. They communicated without speaking, and told me that something else was going to come to my door and that I shouldn't be afraid. My attention was drawn to the door, and a short, white, hairless, big-headed alien approached the door. The door was closed, but I could see it as clearly as if nothing was there at all. It came up to the door and instructed me to place my finger at the base of the door where there was a space about half an inch from the floor that was open to the outside. I felt something tiny touch my finger. I had quick flashes of some weird visions, and then the thing left. The visions I can't remember completely, but they were extremely fast, and I could feel the presence of the short white thing the whole time. Then on the last vision, it became drawn out, and I can remember it clearly. I was standing on a bridge over a river with tall trees all around. I held an infant and knew it was family, but I'm not positive it was mine. The short white thing stood in front of me. I could tell there was extreme danger not far behind, and I was likely to die along with the child. I could also tell the white alien wanted me to give it the baby. I know that it offered to save the baby, but I couldn't bring myself to trust the thing. I considered tossing the kid off the bridge, but I couldn't do that either. Reluctantly, I gave it up to the creature, and just like that, the vision ended.
2016, so just last year. Canadian. I live in Okanagan Valley to give some perspective. Decided to go hiking with a friend in Reverb, which is a mountainous town just a few hours away. We are searching for a flower field at high altitude that I remember going to when I was 6 years old. It was right near a glacier. We set out for one day. We have with us our ultra-light camping equipment, however, in case of bears, both of us are carrying rifles. I was carrying a Norinco M305 14 clone, and my friend had a Lee Enfield. We both carried about 20 bullets, but no more. It is a nice and pleasant day of hiking, and it's time to stop. We set up camp at the edge of a forest pretty high up on the mountains. There is a bowl, so to say, along where we set up. There is the ridge of the bowl about 500 meters away. The sun is setting, and we settle in for the night after eating some MREs and trail food for dinner. It's about 2:30 in the morning when I have the killer urge to pee. So naturally, I hop up out of the tent to go take a leak. The night sky is stunning, and everywhere around us is light out. As I'm watering some grass, I hear what sounds like a large foghorn with some reverb in it echoing across the mountains around us. It's loud, but not incredibly loud, quiet enough to show that there was a good amount of distance between me and the source. My friend didn't even wake up. We will call him Jake. I decided to sit out for a bit and see if anything happened, and to observe the stars. Off in the distance, I see a set of blue lights that are rotating. One could tell they are rotating as there was an uneven number of them, meaning at certain times they were more visible than the last rotation. I wake up Jake. He comes out in time to just barely get a glimpse of it as it went behind a mountain between us and the mountain whose ridge it was on. This should give you an idea of what the environment around us was like. We are getting ready to settle back in when we heard what sounds like a speaker is plugged in. You know that bass noise when an AUX cable is plugged in? We hear about 3 of them in rapid succession quickly, followed by another one of the foghorn, the reverb response, which was now closer. We are a little freaked out as a ways away from anyone, really, and we had not heard any helicopters, and like that everything went black. We passed out or something, but woke up inside our sleeping bags in our tents. I was going to dismiss it as a dream, but Jake remembers it too. We pack up and prepare to move for the day. Intrigued by what had happened the night before, we decide to just move our stuff to the ridge of the bowl, which was wide enough to accommodate our tent with room to spare. We spend the day skipping rocks down the valley or playing cards and such, or just plain relaxing. The view was breathtaking and absolutely beautiful. Again, the sunset is setting in around 8:30 as it was late summer. We plan to stay up till about 12 and do a bit of drinking, if you know what I mean, eh? My friend makes a bet that he can make a 500-meter shot with his Enfield down to where we were camping last night. It's almost pitch black, so I headed down with a light and put up a beer can on a rock. Surprisingly, he makes the shot and hits at 500 meters. But then we heard that bass noise again. Just one. Jake and I exchanged glances as to what it was. It's not nighttime and the fire is roaring and the chat is going. At about 10 p.m. we spot it. 3 lights in the distance in close formation. They are in a vertical triangle moving along the same ridgeline as the other object the night before. We freak out a bit. We dismissed it until it dropped two objects out of it. A bright blue light and a bright red light. We could see them moving under the trees and scanning about with bright lights. Then the reverb noise echoes down the canyon, followed by a near-earth-shattering screech from about 1 kilometer away down the hill by us. We know that something is on the same mountain as us. The three lights in formation have moved away, but the things they have dropped off are quickly moving along the forest floor in our direction. We panic and load our weapons. I got to admit, I did modify the magazine of the M305 to be able to hold about 11 rounds instead of 5. I have 12 rounds on tap and 6 to spare. My friend has about 18 left, and before her guns versus aliens, we spot something big moving down by our former campsite of last night. We are both frozen in fear as we realize what it is. There is a gray alien about 13 feet tall, I'd say, knocking about our former campsite. Then 2 more come out of the forest and join it. Our fire has been long out for over 45 minutes as we took it out pretty quick when the lights showed up. We are confused as to what to do and are terrified beyond degree at the same time. I've never felt a more intense fear in my life. The foghorn noise with reverb sounds off down the valley, and we can see that the 2 colored lights that wear on the forest floor are now being picked up once again. One of the tall grays looks up at us. It sees us. That brief moment of eye contact has been in my nightmares ever since. We blacked out after that. This time we woke up side by side. Our weapons unloaded next to us with some of the ammo missing. Our arms were flush with our bodies and we were laid close together, touching in fact. Our tent had been completely ransacked, and most of our stuff was gone. A bit of our food remained and was neatly stacked with what was left of our ammunition. We packed up what we had and prepared to leave. The grass at the bottom of the bowl had been burnt, and a crop circle type shape was in place. We passed down where the tall grays had been and saw some footprints. The footprints were odd in shape compared to ours, but had some similarities, such as the arch of the foot was identical. At the end where toes should be were 3 large ones like a cliché dinosaur footprint. On our way down we could see symbols burned into trees and other trees knocked over. Halfway down we found a bear which looked like it had met a horrible demise. Its rib cage was split right open, and some of the bear was burnt. It lacked eyes and a nose, and its back 2 legs were missing. The ground was stained with its blood all around it, and a perfect black circle had been burnt in the ground around it. We started to run when we can. We were exiting a trailhead at sunset and looked back up towards the mountains. We couldn't see anything, but as we got back into Jake's truck, I could swear I heard the reverb noise again. So that's my story /X/. I'm never going back there again. At least not within the next 10 years, that's for sure. If you want to venture to that area, it's up near Ghost Peak in Revelstoke, British Columbia in Canada.
All right, here's mine. 17 years old, alone in rural Australia at Dad's house. Dad away overnight for work. Warm night, dead still, no moon. Sitting there watching movies at around 11 p.m. Get up, go into the kitchen to get snack, walking back to the couch. Out of the corner of my eye, I see a figure standing right at the sliding door, looking through glass dead at me. Looks 100% grey alien. Huge black almond-shaped eyes, grey skin, very slender body, long spindly fingers, around 5 feet tall. Get startled and randomly start yelling at it like it was a wild animal. Just stand there staring at it for 10 seconds. Suddenly wake up lying on a deck chair outside, still dark. Almost immediately puke, splitting headache. Glass door wide open, don't remember opening it at all. Trudge back inside. Look at the clock in the kitchen. 4 a.m. Go to the room and collapse onto the bed. Later that morning, Dad wakes me up. Jokes about finding me just laying there on bed, looking like I have a hangover. I can't bring myself to tell him what happened.
I've seen a few UFOs in my life. I'll start with the very first one. Be me, 15 years old, small rural town in Florida, waiting for a friend to get up and come open her door to let me in. Sitting in the car looking out towards the sugar mill, see 3 bright orange fireballs flying towards the ground. Oh, cool, shooting stars. All of a sudden, they all stop midair in a line. One on far right drops down pretty fast. Meanwhile, the other two just gradually float down. Now that I think about it, they kinda disappeared into the ground. And another time, me and a friend saw something like a jet come out of the cane fields almost out of nowhere. Second time was maybe a year later. I like to hang out on my roof and listen to music a lot because I liked isolation. Be me, around 16, watching the sunset, listening to Insert Band here. See plane flying towards my house. The course that it's on would fly it right over my house. Notice it's flying too low and too fast to be a plane because it was just barely visible a second ago. Now it's about 3, maybe 4 blocks away. Think to myself, that's not a plane, anon. As if it somehow knew I was aware of it, it suddenly stopped in midair. Veered off to the right, stopped. Veered off to the left, stopped. Then veered off to the right and continued as if to bypass my house. Get excited and start banging on the roof, yelling for my dad to bring me binoculars. Dad has always been extremely skeptical and would laugh at me for believing in aliens. Dad comes out with binoculars and I quickly grab them. Takes me a minute to get it into focus. Finally see a black triangle with white lights on each tip and a pulsing red and white light in the center. Give Dad binoculars and tell him to see for himself and tell me I'm crazy. Yes, you're crazy, anon. It's probably just a plane or helicopter. Stunned silence. Puts binoculars down, and I see he looks kinda scared. That wasn't a plane or helicopter or anything I've ever seen before. Ha, you asshole, and you fucking called me crazy. The object then just continues on the same path until it disappears over the horizon.
I first saw a UFO in 2000. I was 3 years old. It was a dark night out on the front porch of my grandmother's house. I was alone staring at the stars while my family mingled inside. Out of nowhere across the street, I see a massive square-shaped craft hovering over a home across the street. It was a gray aircraft, if that makes any sense. It just sat there, silent, taking up most of my vision. Even at that age, I knew this craft was a UFO. I ran inside to show my family what I had just seen. I'm greeted with a, "What a creative mind." I ran back outside to see that the craft had vanished. Fast forward to 2002, I was a normal, happy child with little care or understanding of the world. It all started one night. My family all sat down and prayed together. We were Catholic. We said our good nights and set off for sleep, not knowing what was to come. I was drifting off to sleep when suddenly I felt paralyzed. I felt deep pain behind my eyes. Following the pain, my vision would turn deep red. Then a white noise filled my ears that haunts me to this day. I came to with my visor blinded by searing white light. I was being led to a yellow house at the end of the path. My field of view was straight onto the yellow house. That is, it felt like my muscles were being contracted to the point that my head stood stationary. Trees were placed all along the path to the house. They all seemed perfect, too perfect. When I tried to look at the being leading me, I would get a thought saying, "Don't look, we do not want to scare you." I heard this as I would try to turn my head with great pain. It was like it was in my head. Once we reached the yellow house, the red door would open to a dark pit. At this point, I would close my eyes, but over time I was braver and kept them open. I would then be lifted off my feet like I was flying. Going through the door frame was like passing into a new world, from searing white light to pitch black room that had no corners. The white light poured through the door as I floated to the table that was lit by a warm orange glow. Beings stood around the exam table awaiting their work. I would be set down and work would begin. No, I don't know what they did. I would know it was done when I heard the white noise and my vision would turn static like a TV. I would open my eyes and be in my room. I would then fall asleep and be able to dream. This nightmare happens every night for months. They would have to happen before I could sleep. They would not let me sleep until they took me. I thought these nightmares were normal and every kid had them. Well, I know now I was gravely wrong. The dreams would cease out of the blue with no notice to just start back up again weeks later. I began having my father stay with me until I would fall asleep so he could protect me. I would fall asleep and they would come and rip me from my slumber nightly. I started to get angry and began making an effort to see the being leading me to doom every night. I would turn and bear through the pain. The first time I saw gibberish, it was like a window with fog and I could see the outline of a person behind it. The first time I clearly saw it was when I got a good look at its arm. It looked like greenish dolphin skin. I would only get a look until the pain became too much and I would return to being led. But one night, when I was being led, I decided to try and look. The pain was great, but I said out loud, "I want to see your face." I'm greeted with my reflection in the eye of the tall gray. That image is burned into my memory. It almost shrieked in fear knowing that I had seen it. I was quickly rammed through the procedure of the abduction. Everything felt clinical, like it needed to happen that way, but one weird thing was that it was like they were trying to make me as comfortable as possible. They never really hurt me in any physical sense that I know of. They seemed to stop completely when I was around 11. Life went on as normal and the dreams faded into memory. Fast forward to 4th grade. I woke up like any other morning to get ready for school. I eat my cereal and head off to the bus stop. I walk into the crowded bus and sat down into an empty seat. I proceed to close my eyes to sleep a little before we get to school. Out of nowhere, I'm staring over my body as the bus is moving, almost like I was in third person. My vision proceeds to be zoomed out, seeing my city, state, country, then planet. As I'm zooming out, my life is flashing before my eyes. With all this shit happening, I'm sucked into a state of pure peace floating above Earth. I just sat there as a being of love and light, watching the Earth spin. I wasn't alone looking down at the planet. There were around 2 other beings chilling with me. We said to each other telepathically that we felt sorry for them and that they didn't understand the truth. I felt great sadness for people on the planet. It was the most blissful peace I have ever felt to this day. Then like a snap, I'm ripped back into my body. I open my eyes, then proceed to freak out. To this day, I don't know what or how I experienced that without the aid of drugs. Fast forward to high school. Things seem to be normal, going to school and hanging out with my buds. I start to get the feeling of being watched at night when I'm outdoors. I can't explain the feeling, but it's like you can feel the eyes. Start to see orbs and lights in the sky often, to the point I start to freak out. Fun factoid, I never made the connection with the nightmares and alien shit, so this shit was just happening again. My brother thought it was a good idea to try to call them, and it worked. We both see 2 blinding lights flash in the clear sky like a lighthouse light. That's when shit started to ramp up. I would get nosebleeds and wake up in weird-ass positions. Started to get freaked out not being able to sleep and became dependent on melatonin for sleep a while. Go to sleep one night and drift off into slumber to then have my hand grabbed out of nowhere. I open my eyes as I hear the smack of the grip the being had on my arm. I look up to see a white-gowned woman with black hair covering her face, think like The Grudge. I proceed to scream, waking up my entire house. I turn on the light and saw the thing vanish as my mom came in. It was around 3 a.m. I slept with the light on for the rest of the night. Nope, fucking nope, that shit scared the shit out of me. I now think that The Grudge was an alien saying, "What's up?" Anywho, whenever I would smoke a late-night ciggy before bed, I would hear a bipedal creature walking in the woods near my backyard. Shit would freak me out. I would think, who the hell is walking in the woods at 3 a.m.? Then I would hear it knock on trees. Nope.jpg. It would happen consistently whenever I smoked those reds. I would see golden orbs in the woods. I had enough and started to go back to church, prayed a lot, and became a super Catholic to cope with alien shit. Came to the conclusion that if I don't remember, then you can do what you want. Then it all seemed to stop. I've just recently made the connection of my nightmares as a child to be abductions. It turns out my family has dealt with UFO and alien shit for a long time. My mother told me stories about seeing UFOs as a child, shit like that, and made the connection that these occurrences are largely based with families or their genetics. Current day, I see UFOs every now and then. I stay strapped now in case those fuckers try to take me again. If you made it here, thanks for reading. It feels good to just put it out there to feel better. It feels like what Chris Chan did is what the alien did. I shit you not. I was socially inept for years thanks to this shit, and I was never able to tell people my pain. As an adult, I'm able to reflect more broadly and fill the web. The phenomenon is real and cases are widespread. Sorry, no dinosaurs. This shit actually happened to me.
I saw 2 UFOs. Back then, I always watched the sky at night. Hanging out with friends in a park. Look at the sky. A very bright light travels the sky. Looks like a satellite, but unusually bright and fast. It was before the ISS, not a meteor. Looks like it's in the atmosphere, not in space. Just watching it traveling in the sky. Suddenly, it makes a 90-degree turn. No speed loss or else. It continues across the sky until it disappears behind trees on the horizon. Second one, go to my kitchen to drink some sweet juice. Something catches the corner of my eye. A bright green light in the sky with a small tail of multiple small white lights. Cool, a big-ass meteor. I ran to my balcony to see it better. It didn't move. WTF, it's supposed to be fast. The more I look at it, the more it looks artificial. White light just going regularly on and off. The whole thing moving very slowly over the horizon. I've watched it for almost 15 minutes. Definitely not a meteor. When it was almost going to disappear behind the horizon. A small white light detaches from the tail and heads towards the ground. If it was something entering the atmosphere, I don't think it would be that slow. I've seen a lot of meteor end shit live or on videos, and I never saw something like that again. Until I watched a UFO documentary, and a little girl made a drawing of a UFO. It looked similar to what I saw.
What would you do if you were me/X/, born as Korean American living in the US, 7 years old, wake up on a table staring up at 3 bug-eyed gray beings with gigantic heads. They operate on my eyes and legs, causing mind-shattering pain. Couldn't move, couldn't scream. Some time passes, I'm able to see again, they tell me, non-verbally, that they will return for my kid since they are done with me. I was confused. What kid? I'm 7. Wake up at 4 a.m. with the same pain in my eyes and legs. Immediately tell my family without a single person to believe me. Fast forward 8 years. Pick up Taekwondo out of curiosity during high school years. Master the techniques at an abnormally fast rate. Able to train 5 hours a day with very quick recovery. Pick up black belt within 9 months, which usually takes 2 years to do properly. Enter and win numerous gold medals in Taekwondo tournaments held in the US and Korea. See disc UFOs throughout entire early adulthood, feel frustrated every time after seeing one. Continue training for several more years until 4th degree black belt. Teach adults and kids, but stop training after that. Advance in IT career field. Find someone and get married. Have a daughter who is now 6 years old. Find out through the doctor that I have macular degeneration, progressive blindness in both eyes, and peripheral artery disease in my legs. Now dependent on pharma drugs just to function normally, suffer through bullshit of no fun allowed during quarantine like everyone else. Watch the news suddenly open up about UFO disclosures. Get an ominous feeling that something will happen to my daughter soon. So what do? I'm just a normie city salary slave.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.